Morning everyone, it's Dan here from Reptile Encounters, Senior Executive Wildlife Ambassador, and I'm coming back to you today to talk about one of my favourite groups of animals. But before we get to them, a couple of things. Number one, make sure you've subscribed to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the fantastic content we're going to be uploading there. Make sure you've got notifications turned on for our Facebook live stream so whenever we come back on live, you guys don't miss anything. Now we're going to be talking today about geckos. Lots of people just think of tiny little things scurrying around on the walls, but in Australia, we have 194 species of gecko. A lot of geckos, and they come in a whole bunch of different shapes and sizes. There's actually 3 different groups of gecko, and not all of them are that related to each other. They can be very weird. They're all absolutely wonderful. And the first species we're going to look at today, one of the smaller geckos, but one of our most beautiful species.
We have a few hellos.
We've got hellos already, do we? Jeez, everybody's jumping on.
I know, Corey's here. He says
Corey.
hello. James says hi, Dan.
All right. All right, let's meet our first gecko. This little beauty comes from southeast Queensland. They are a threatened species. They're not a very big species, but they are sweethearts. Here we go. Come on, are you going to grip on? There we go. This is Stripes. And Stripes here is called a golden-tailed gecko. Now these belong to a group of geckos that we call the sticky-tailed geckos, and that's because they've got a really cool trick. Some species can be a lot bigger than this. Golden tails are one of the smaller sticky-tailed geckos. And what they'll do when they freak out, if a predator gets too close to them, they'll open their mouth. Inside their mouth tends to be jet black, and then they'll stick their tail up, and this foul-smelling liquid will shoot straight out of it. It smells disgusting, but it is completely harmless. However, that does put off most predators. They don't stick around long enough to find out whether it is or not. Now, there's 3 subspecies of golden-tailed gecko, and you can tell them apart 2 ways, or 3 ways. 1, where they're found. They're all found in different spots. 2, the colour on their tail and the shape around the edges of that beautiful golden bar, and their eye colour. One's got red eyes, one's got amber eyes, and one's got really light pale, almost light greenish eyes. And Stripes here has got amber eyes, which are yellowish orange colour, which would make them Triorius, would be the name of the subspecies. Now they are one of our climbing geckos. All the geckos we're talking about today are climbing geckos. We're going to look at some of the ground ones next week. And the way they climb is amazing. If you can have a look from this angle, you'll see that Stripes has got flat pads on his toes. And on the top, they might just look like a regular old toe, but Stripes' partner is just behind me in their enclosure, and he's stuck to the glass. And if you have a look, you might be able to see, if we can get it focused in, those little split pads. On those little pads on their toes, they have got lots and lots of absolutely tiny hairs. And those hairs are called setae. And those hairs split into smaller hairs that are called spatulae, and they can grip almost any surface, including, as you can see there, glass. In fact, they're so small that the molecules in those hairs can interact with the molecules on whatever it is that they're standing on and keep them stuck down. But they're not stuck too hard. They can retract their hand back and lose that grip and get it back so quickly that some geckos can run 20 times the length of their own body per second. They can be very, very fast. It's amazing. It's all physics, the way that they grip and they interact with the electrons and things like that. It's really, really cool. Now, oh, he's doing something really cool here. Hang on. Yeah, now it turns you around, you never do it again. Most gecko species in Australia don't have eyelids. And when they want to clean their eyes, they will lick their own eyeballs. Most of them will have a large scale that goes all the way across the front of the eye, and it's obviously completely clear so they can see. And when they want to clean it, they will lick their own eyeballs. Now, unfortunately, I don't think he's going to do it again because they never want to cooperate with us when we want him to do something like that. I didn't see it coming. He hasn't been sprayed with water or anything. He just randomly decided to lick his own eyeball. And that's his business. If that's what he wants to do, that's all right. Now, I'm going to try and pop him back. The reason I've got him on this stick, it's not because he gets aggro and tries to rip my fingers off or anything. He's very, very small. And geckos have got very small, very soft scales. It means that he's going to absorb the heat off my hands very, very quickly, which means he could overheat sitting in my hands. It's a risk that we get with lots of little lizards and little skink species as well. They can overheat in our hands. And so I want him to be comfortable. I don't want him to, oh, what's this? You're not going to spray liquid at me, are you? You got a little bit worried about my hand there. That's okay. Absolutely beautiful. Look at those amazing reticulated patterns on his body. Now these guys will, all, before I put him away, they will bask out in the open during the day. They won't sit on a rock like a blue tongue. What they do is they sit on branches just like this, even thinner, and they'll grip onto the little twig and they'll lie their body all the way along it. Even larger species like some of the spiny tail geckos that are really closely related to these guys will bask out in the open, lying along the twigs, which has earned them another name, phasmid geckos, because they behave quite similar to a lot of stick insects. Now I'll pop him back in here. We're going to meet a gecko from another type of... Whoop. Can you hold that up for me? Thank you. Now, you're going to let me grab you. No, he's going to run. Whoop. There you go. And we'll pop him back in there. Now, this next gecko is not just one gecko. We've got some babies here at Reptile Encounters. These things are absolutely adorable. And I'm going to see how many of them I can get out at the same time, just to see if we can push our luck today at Reptile Encounters. Now, you guys if I can get the lid off it. Now, here we have, what? Everybody's running. 1, 2, now stay on my hands please. This could get hairy. 3, whoop, you've got some energy. Whoop, 3 and 4. Here they are. These little babies here are called, whoop, and they're all off, marbled velvet geckos. Now they are only young, they were only born last season, they're probably only a few months old. And marbled velvet geckos are known for their beautiful, really soft, velvety skin. Velvet geckos are quite a large group of geckos here in Australia. We've actually got about 15 species, and some of them are only really recently discovered. Marbled velvet geckos used to be found pretty much all the way across the northern half of Australia. But we realised we were actually looking at 4 different species. The ones that are actually marbled velvet geckos come from up the top of the Northern Territory. And the others have been split, the ones from the centre of Australia, the ones from up in Queensland, and the ones from over in Western Australia. Now they're well known for their fat tails. They will store fat in their tail, kind of like a shingleback. In fact, the genus they belong to, Odira, means fat-tailed. And they can store that in there for a rainy day. Now they've got these beautiful bands on them at the moment.
Speaking of tails,
yeah,
we have a question.
Oh, we've got a question.
We do. Do they grow their tails back if they drop them?
Yes. So all the geckos that we're meeting today are all able to drop their tails. When they grow their tail back though, it doesn't usually come out looking as nice as it was the first time. And they can drop that regenerated tail again and again as well. In fact, there's one species of gecko from up in northern Queensland that when it drops, I think it's called a chameleon gecko, I think that's the one I'm thinking of, they throw their tail and it wriggles around and they can get away. And if they regrow their tail and they have to shed it again, not only does the second one wriggle around, it also squeaks. Makes this really high-pitched noise that distracts a predator. They see this little thing wriggling around squeaking, they're going to go, oh, that's my prey, grab that, and the rest of the gecko can get away. It's really cool. Now, with these little guys, I don't know if I'm going to attempt to grab a 5th gecko right now. I might just put these guys away in a second. As they grow, their pattern changes rather dramatically. When they're born, they have these thick bands all the way down them, but they start to develop spots all over their body, and those bands will start to fade as they get bigger and bigger. When they are full grown, they almost look like indigenous art. They are covered, oh, it's a nice little jump you got there, dude. They will almost start looking like that indigenous artwork with the dots all over, and they look absolutely amazing. I'll pop these guys back, and I'll get one out that we've got here today, courtesy of Faye, that's a little bit older and is starting to develop those spots. Now, can I keep you all in here at the same time? There's a question. Everybody's warming up on my hand, I think.
The challenge of wrangling geckos, Dan.
Well, the challenge of wrangling 4 of the same animal when they want to jump and run and can climb all over you. Now, this one here is a little bit older and starting to develop those amazing patterns. Oh, I've got a funny feeling this one ain't going to be as keen as those last 4. Come on. Honey. Stop. Here we go. Have a look at it. What? Stop. Oh, don't you bite me. Always thinking about it. Stop. Oh, look at you carrying on. They're very dramatic, aren't they? Here, we have those amazing dots starting to come through, and those bands are starting to fade. See, this one's a little bit bigger. How old do you reckon this one would be, Faye?
He's a year old.
A year old. So starting to develop those patterns, and probably in the next year or so, be able to get to full size. Now, you're being very dramatic. I promise I'm not squeezing that very hard. Don't you bite my finger, cheeky. You're thinking about it. You know what's a lot easier to show you the patterns than unleashing such a dramatic animal? A book. Have a look at this. Here is what they look like when they're full grown. This one up here is actually a Western Australian animal, and this one here from the Adelaide River in the Northern Territory, and even this one down here from Pine Creek. These are Northern Territory animals. You can see the big fat tail on them that they're named after, and you'll see those amazing spots and patterns all over them. They are beautiful. Now, they do get to about that long, and they'll be eating mostly medium-sized invertebrates. They'll be eating moths, and they'll be eating little spiders and little crickets and grasshoppers and things, bigger things than our golden-tailed gecko will be eating. But they're also an important food source. Because they're gecko species, most of them are quite small, they are important food to other animals. And some of our most famous python species, the little ones, the children's pythons and the Stimson's pythons, they have geckos as one of the main parts of their diet. And something like an adult marbled velvet gecko would be a perfect meal for a Stimson's python, who's only going to be about 75 centimetres. And it's a little bit mean, things have got to eat. And, you know, the beautiful gecko is still on the menu, unfortunately, but our beautiful Stimson's pythons have got to get a feed as well. Now, the next two geckos I'm going to show you are big. In fact, they are both basically in competition with each other as to who is the largest, or the longest, I should say, species of gecko in Australia. This first one is another Queensland native from up in the tropics, and this one is Grumpy. You've already bitten me. Let's not do it again. Come here. Come on, come on. Ah, he's got me. Come here. That's all right. That was only a warning. Here we go. This one here is Chomper. You might have seen why just then. And Chomper, can I have my fingers back, please? Chomper is called a ring-tailed gecko. In fact, he's called a coastal ring-tailed gecko. These guys are big, and our coastal ring-tailed geckos here are not full-grown. They can get very close to 30 centimetres long, so the size of your ruler. They are a big gecko. But look at the big, beautiful patterned eyes as well. Now, these guys come from the rainforests up in Queensland. Oh, you're getting angry at the camera too. And what they actually are has been a bit of a mystery to science for a while. See, originally, the species we thought they were is also found up on some islands around Papua New Guinea. This group of geckos, the family that they belong to, goes all the way from Australia right across Asia and into southern Europe. A very big group, and a lot, something like 90 species. Now, we only had one in Australia. We thought it was the same as the ones from those islands. Turns out we were wrong. We had this species here that we thought looked different on the coast, and then looked a bit different, a bit more inland. We realised that those are actually two different species, and this one here's the coastal form. Now, we thought there might be a third one as well. People had gotten photos of this mysterious gecko, bigger than the rest, found in the rainforest on Cape York. And scientists went looking for this rainforest species. They didn't find it. What they did find was 3 completely new species of ring-tailed gecko. So we went from having 1 to having 2 to having 6 really, really quickly. They are amazing animals. Now, they are still geckos, but they don't have those sticky pads on their toes. What they've got is little claws, very sharp, curved little claws. They are just as at home in the trees as they are on the ground, and they will hunt on the ground and in trees. They will even sleep on the ground or in trees and rock crevices in the cooler gullies in the rainforests where they like to live. And being this size, they will be big invertebrates. They will eat things like small frog species. They'll even eat smaller geckos. They'll grab them and they'll shake them. They've got a very strong bite, which is where we got the name Chomper from. And they can swallow down smaller climbing species of gecko. Now, he can shed his tail too. It is a very, very long tail, and they can move it around as well. It is a little bit prehensile, but they're not really going to hang from it very much. In fact, that new species, that rainforest one they still haven't found, they believe that it actually walks around with its tail kind of curled up a little bit like a chameleon, which is really, really weird. But unfortunately, we haven't actually found it, so we're not sure whether it's real or just a myth of some photographers in Northern Australia. Now, I'll pop him away because he's all starting to get real. Whoa. He actually just let out a little bit of a squeak as well. Geckos are the most vocal group of reptiles in the world. The only thing that comes close to them is crocodiles. And with a bite like you, you're about halfway in between. They will squeak, they will chirp, they can make a whole bunch of different... Some of our species, the ones we get around Melbourne, the marbled geckos, they're only about that long. They can let out a high-pitched little ting noise, kind of like someone hitting a piece of metal. These guys make a little bit more of a squeak, especially when they're worried. And our legless lizards do it as well, because technically our legless lizards are actually a type of gecko. I'll pop this one away and we'll get out his competition. Our last arboreal gecko for today. May also be the longest species in Australia, and these guys are spectacular. Part of a family of geckos only found in Australia. We call them the Odd-Tailed Geckos. And a few of them are terrestrial, but this one is a climber. This is Sully. Now, Sully's a bit happier being handled. He's been out getting handled for quite a while. Here we go. Have a look at this lizard. Sully is called a leaf-tailed gecko, a rough-throated leaf-tailed gecko. And there's a whole bunch of species of leaf-tailed geckos that go from about Sydney right up all the way to the top of Queensland. And they're all found in different spots. Tiny little gullies around the bottom of certain mountains and things like that. Yeah, you can climb them, mate, that's all right. In fact, one species is only found around one little mountain in Queensland up to about 500 metres above sea level. That's its entire range in the whole planet. They are absolutely amazing. He's got a big flat head like a crocodile, and he's got those amazing eyes as well. Geckos have got incredible eyes and a little bit of a rough throat, which is where he gets his name from. Not all the leaf-tailed geckos have got that. Now, these guys have got incredible camouflage. That fringe of spikes, or tubercles we call them, along his sides, and then that amazing, amazing tail helps him to blend in. These guys, just like the golden-tailed geckos, will spend their days hiding in plain sight. But instead of hiding along a branch, they will sit, just like he was before, on a rock face or a mossy tree trunk. And when they're sitting still with their legs tucked in and all the moss and things growing around them, they are almost completely invisible. In fact, it's actually easier for us to find them at night because we can shine a torch and their eyes shine bright orange. During the day, it's almost impossible. They are incredible at their camouflage. They will stay in the same position at night when they hunt. They'll just turn around. They will sit face down on a boulder in a rainforest gully or on a mossy tree trunk, and they will wait for invertebrates to come running up the tree trunk, little cockroaches and things like that. And when they run past, whack! They'll strike out really fast, grab their food, wolf it down, crunch, 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 swallow it down, and wait for the next one. Now, this tail does come off too, just like our other geckos. And these guys, if they get stressed, can actually drop their tail off without anything having to grab on. We don't want that to happen. And so we're being really gentle with him because we don't want to stress him. But Sully has, over the years, come out and done shows with us and lots of displays. If you've come out and seen us at your local shopping centre before, you've probably met Sully, even though you might not have been able to see him in his tank. He's got a piece of bark that's his absolute favourite, and he gets into the same position and no one can ever see him. So he knows that we're not a threat to him, and hopefully that means he knows he doesn't have to cast off that tail. When it grows back, it doesn't grow back as fancy as this. It's almost kind of like a long heart shape. It's smooth, it's got patterns on it, but it doesn't blend in as well, and it's certainly not as incredibly well detailed as this. These geckos are absolutely gorgeous. Now, he's the last of the climbing geckos we'll meet today. You'll be able to see there, as he's climbing along, he's got claws as well. Sharp little needles instead of those pads. Some of our climbing geckos, they don't need those pads. Those sharp little claws give him all the grip he needs, and it's almost like pulling off Velcro when I'm trying to get him off my shirt. I just don't want to hurt him, so I've got to be really, really careful. Have you guys got any questions?
We do.
Geckos?
Corey would like to know, is there a good book that he can get to help him identify different gecko species?
Oh, there are some amazing reptile field guides that you can pick up. You can look on places like eBay or the Andrew Isles bookshop, which is a whole naturalist bookshop that you can access online. There's field guides to the reptiles of Australia. There's even more specific ones depending on where you live. There's, you know, the reptiles of Victoria or the reptiles of the Mallee or New South Wales, reptiles of Queensland, stuff like that. Heaps and heaps of books that you can identify the animals of your area or of other areas as well.
So we also have a question from Thomas asking, so does that mean that geckos are cannibals?
They can be. Depends on the species. A big one might try and have a chomp on a little one of the same species, depending on the size of them.
So what's the biggest gecko on Earth, Corey wants to know?
Or the biggest, what are they called? The giant cave geckos, or the New Caledonian cave gecko, something like that. Their nickname in captivity is leechies because the scientific name is leachiensis or something. They are these monstrous geckos from not too far away from Australia. They're from New Caledonia. Really, really big, chunky geckos that I think can get to over 30 centimetres, but it's the girth of them. It's almost like a short-tailed blue tongue that's nocturnal with a really powerful bite but a really, really sweet disposition. Now, that's all the time we've got for the stream this morning. We'll be back for another live stream. I'll be back for another live stream at 2 o'clock. We're going to be looking at some freshwater reptiles. But for now, I'm Dan. I'm the Senior Wildlife Ambassador for Reptile Encounters. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up to date with our content. Make sure you've got notifications enabled for our live stream so you don't miss a thing. Like our Facebook page and check out our website where you can find out about our experiences, our wild live streams, and you can even sponsor some of our animals. I'll see you at 2 this arvo.